Welcome to the Eskrima Podcast. My name is Jason Enai, and I am an Enian Escrimador. So, last night worked on some grappling. It was footwork Monday. Had some great basic training in Eskrima as well. I'm going to talk a little bit about that footwork, but mostly I just wanted to talk about how bringing things to a level where we're constantly trying to simulate some aspect of combat and then being honest with ourselves about the training that we're doing gives us a better result than simply just memory by rote or believing simply that the thing that we're doing because we're doing it and it's called something makes it effective. So, hand, foot, way, karate, do, taekwondo, right? Foot, hand principle, right? Or fist law, kempo, kung fu, great treasure, great effort, right? Grand ultimate fist, tai chi, right? Eskrima, to fight or to skirmish. Arnistement, weapons or armor of hands, right? So all of these different names for different martial arts, right? They kind of try to express how the art is utilized and how we might win with that art, and its strategy or its tools. Or I personally like Eskrima the most, honestly, simply because it just means to skirmish or to fight, not anything else. I gotta give my props to that the name Tai Chi, because Dai Chi Tuan means Grand Ultimate Fist. That's a ballsy name. It's a ballsy name, and while most people dismiss that art, and rightly so, simply because most people don't teach that art in any way that is reminiscent of combat or effectiveness. Just because you call it something, or just because it's practiced some way, doesn't mean that it's the thing that we think it is, right? We see this in Eskrima where, if I'm good at sombrada or flow spar or some other kind of drill, lock and block in Sarada especially, right? Walk away thinking that I can fight, or I can do this, or I can do that. And I used to think that too. And then I spent 20 years doing security and law enforcement things and learned that while my training was completely adequate, strangely, the things that I was doing in real life didn't match what I was doing on the training floor. They didn't match anything that I saw in any kind of competitive martial arts, combat martial arts, like boxing, or sure, it was similar, but it's different when someone's trying to beat your head in with a brick. So what we think we're doing isn't always what really is what we're doing, and whether we're good at it or not, or whether we're going to be good at it. And I've been fortunate because I've had students, which I've discussed in previous episodes, be successful in defending themselves, as I have myself. We have to be honest with ourselves with the training, right? Doing Tai Chi, 64 position or 128 position, long form, whatever, and doing it beautifully and fluidly doesn't necessarily mean that it's effective. And training only the way that you think Tai Chi is trained and understanding and thinking that's the limit of Tai Chi does not mean it's not effective, right? It has to do with being honest with ourselves and trying to simulate combat. So like with my students, which I recommend you do for yourself, and if you're my student, you should be doing this for yourself. And I don't care if you're my student in the Middle East, or my student in Asia, or my student in Europe, or my student here in the United States, or Canada, or wherever else, right? You have to ask yourself, well, that was a fun workout. How was that like fighting? Okay. How was it not like fighting? These two questions are valuable because then we can squeeze more value out of the training in reflection of the training. Doesn't mean don't train the way that we train. Don't, if you're a Tai Chi person, I'm not saying don't do those forms. Just be honest with yourself. How was that like fighting? How is that not like fighting? Now, I personally, using Tai Chi as an example, have seen combat Tai Chi and slow, fast Tai Chi and small circle Tai Chi and a number of other different elements. And that is a brutal art. if you understand it. It goes back to my dad's style definition. We'll just say Inayan style definition, which is, if you take a method and you study it thoroughly and understand it adequately enough, if not thoroughly as well, that method should be able to accommodate any other art, strategy, or tactic in combat without the need to borrow or steal from any other technology, right? Tai Chi is a brutal art, and so is karate and taekwondo, and so is Krav Maga, and so is, jiu-jitsu, the Japanese one. Brazilian one, it's pretty good. It's pretty good. And that's coming from an advanced beginner like myself, right? Like, as long as you understand the dynamics of striking, which is where a strictly jujitsuka or jushitero will a lot of times be missing things. Doesn't mean that it's not a good art, right? But at the same time, we have to ask ourselves, well, how was that like a fight? How was that not like a fight? And, were we going with full speed or full power? Maybe yes, maybe no, right? Was that person trying to attack me? Was I trying to defend and attack them, right? Was there malice? It's usually the thing that's missing is malice. And this is where competitive martial arts, MMA fighters, boxers, wrestlers would be like, yeah, but, because we're going hard. Jiu-jitsu are really about that, right? We go hard. Okay? Cool. Was he trying to kill me? Because that's a different fight. It's a completely different fight. Right? So most of us, including, when I train and teach Eskrima, or when I'm teaching JKD, or when I'm teaching Silat, or when I'm teaching Jiu-Jitsu, right? Or any other art that I'm capable of teaching, or any kind of movement, without restriction, right? I'm still doing Inayan because we use the cipher, right? But under different stages. No one's ever trying to hurt each other. And if we're trying to hurt each other, we ain't trying to kill each other. And having a fight against someone who's trying to kill you, different. That guy is going to try to beat your head in with a brick. That's a different feeling. That's a different feeling entirely. And it's actually comes to like, I trained with Ata, my Moro Filipino martial art instructor. He himself is not Moro. He's Muslim, of course, but we had that discussion in past lessons about, this art that we're doing is not for dancing around in a ring or for getting points or any of those things. It's about quickly ending a fight before becoming brutalized or dead yourself, right? That is a significantly different consideration. And so we have to come back to those questions. How was this like a fight? How is this not like a fight? And then from there, go, okay, so what can we draw from this experience in terms of how applicable it is? And then how can we look at where it wasn't like a fight, how we can value the safety that it brings and allowing us to learn a lesson that in some cases, for if you take the hard path, would require visits to the hospital. Your objective is to learn as much as possible and be able to employ as much as possible and aware of as many choices as possible while your opponent isn't, right? That'll allow you to dictate the outcome. That's one of our concepts of flow that's in the cipher, which is the law of requisite variety, right? So when we look at our training and we're honest with ourselves, right, we get, okay, that was like a fight. So last night during the Spider Dumo class, right, our grappling class, which is asking the question of what does the Inayan cipher do, or how is the Inayan cipher executed when it isn't just Filipino martial arts, right? So that's what the Spider Dumog system does. And Last night was grappling. So we're doing catch wrestling, dumog, haramal silat, Brazilian jiu-jitsu stuff on the ground, right? Focusing a lot, because a lot of the guys that come, they're really focused on their grappling. They want to be good at that because, in their mind, that's like fighting. That's fighting to them. And they enjoy it because they can go hard and fast. So we're simulating striking while in side control and in guard, right? The thing that we have to consider is our opponent may not follow our rules and think about how they need to stabilize a position, right? So that they can get to safety, so that they get position, so that they get submission. Maybe they just want to beat my face in, right? And what does that look like and feel like? And not ground and pound, because that's different too. Dangerous, very much a fight in many ways, right? But also not the kind of opponent that I'm going to encounter in most cases. So what do we do when we have a wild thrashing beast that's trying to hurt us, right? And how does our techniques work? And so in that environment, in that frame, it casts in relief the importance of timing and the ability to capitalize on movement through our positional changes, right? And so that's like a fight, because that person's trying to hit us. They ain't trying to hurt us. Certainly ain't trying to kill us. But it's like a fight because, they're hitting us and they're trying to do things that would hurt us, and we still need to stave those things off while we find a better position, a more defensible position. That idea is true in small arms combat, in large-scale warfare, in unarmed one-on-one combat, and in a certain degree, if you're at the right school under the right instructor, true of multiple opponent combat, right? You can start to address those things. So it was fun. It was a good trick. It was a class. Everybody had fun. Some people are a little bit bumped up. Patrick took a knee to the face while we were doing basically the same thing, so that was good times too. How was it like a fight, right? Which brings me to a little sidebar thing, right? So Patrick has to leave because he has an APAC meeting for his company that he works for. He's gonna meet with his Asian Pacific region team, right? So he's got to get to a meeting at 9 p.m. at night here in Pacific time. Right, so, and Reedy, he's got to get to a 10 p.m. APAC meeting. So we're under a little bit of a time crunch, but more so for Patrick because he's got to leave significantly early, right? So I said, okay, well, you guys are going to work on your coordination exercises, and then Patrick and I are going to get a couple rolls in, so that way Patrick gets a workout, gets to have some experience, and also gets to shake off the day. That's one of the greatest things about training. And there's nothing like a fight to shake off all your other worries, right? So we can bring that value into the training as well, right? So he and I roll, and the first roll, apparently I didn't tie my gi pants on tight enough, so they start to slip over my hips, right? And so, we roll, we finish, and I'm like, man, I almost lost my pants. And I'm like, that was really tough. And I'm like, wait, that's a good idea. He's like, looks at me and says, I'm not going to tie these on tight. I'm like, the first thing you're going to do is you're going to defend, and the first time you get a chance, you're going to take it in a shot, and you're going to pants me, right? And then I got to fight the rest of the fight with these pants somewhere over my waist somewhere. And so we're rolling. He shoots in. He takes those pants, my gi pants. I'm wearing spats underneath, right? But he pulls them down, and they're across my thighs. The waistband of the pants are across my thighs. Completely inhibited my ability to shrimp. Completely inhibited my ability to bridge at one point because the legs of the pants slipped over my feet. Now I don't have any traction on the mat. So I'm trying to defend myself while he's moving to position. So he's scrambling all over me, getting every position because I can't mobilize my hips in a certain way. So then I have to switch my position. So the first time I did it, I was able to keep going and moving, and we were eventually, we finished. I don't know if you tell me, it doesn't really matter. It was mostly about the experience of like, okay, so what happens if, you're in your gray sweats, because it's gray sweat season, right? And home invasion, you get in a fight, and your sweatpants end up around your knees or something like that. How are you going to fight in that situation? And we're specifically addressing grappling, right? The second time I was able to just slip my pants off in the course of the fracas. Again, how was that like a fight, and how was that not like a fight? Well, I mean, Patrick wasn't trying to kill me. He wasn't trying to hurt me, really. We were just kind of going through this experience, but he was trying to attack me with at least grappling attacks. He's trying to, get a wrist lock in, get an arm bar in, Americana, which we call, a figure four lock, or if you want to do, a double wrist lock, or whatever silly name we want to call it, right? He's trying to get all the locks, all the positions, chokes, and stuff like that. At one part, he almost got an arm triangle. I'm dealing with suddenly having immobilized legs. And I think it's no different than when we've trained with handcuffs on, right? So, you're handcuffed or your hands are bound, and how do you fight, right? You're able to get up, stand, do whatever it is, or you come from a prone position and you stand up while being bound at the wrists, right? Before we go forward with that, we have to understand that just because we're handcuffed doesn't mean we were handcuffed by the good guys, right? So you still need to learn how to fight, because you can't be like, oh, my hands are bound, so I couldn't do anything. You still got to fight, right? Because that's like a fight, right? But having that experience, and like having a limitation in the way that I move, or the limitation in the way that I can move my feet or my hands, simulates an aspect of combat that's very real, right? The time I got my left hand broken during full contact double stick fighting, I didn't stop. My hand broken, my arm didn't work for a little bit. Didn't stop, because I don't get to stop in a real fight because my hand's broken, right? My dad was always of the mind, like, if you didn't feel good, you should still come to class. I don't think that anymore. We're not with, like, COVID and all that stuff. But at the same time, I don't get to tell the bad guy that I don't feel good. I don't mean like, oh, well, I don't feel like fighting because, or I can't fight because I didn't make weight, or I had a bad day, or any of those things, because that ain't like a fight. A fight isn't a choice necessarily, right? Now, violence, on the other hand, violence is a question, and the answer should be yes, right? At least that's what my best friend says. But how was it like a fight? How was it like a fight? So, if we're doing Serrada basics to all those Escrimadors out there, and I'm receiving a blow or giving a blow, because we're doing our basic countering technique, under the cipher, we understand that this is classical conditioning, and we understand what that means and how to leverage that. However, it's like a fight because someone's trying to hit me. And it's like a fight because I'm going to defend, or do my best to defend and counter. It's not like a fight because I'm going to counterattack while my opponent stems for target, where he's going to remain still. You see this in Kempo. You see this in other forms of Filipino martial arts, Kali, Arnis, Eskrima, right? You see this in two-step sparring in Taekwondo. You see this in standing and cover and other various categories of Kempo and Kaji Kempo. So we see this in Lua, Hawaiian martial arts, countering, right? It's like a fight because the person's trying to attack us. It's not like a fight because once we receive that initial attack, we're going to counter and the other person's not going to do anything. Its benefit is that we can be precise. Its benefit is that it's classical conditioning. Its benefit is that we can go through the motions with a relative level of safety so that we don't have to be concerned for our opponent or ourselves as much. And neither of us should have to visit the hospital. It's not as valuable because there's no, intention for harm. There's no malice, right? You get to move and the opponent doesn't get to move at the end of that. But there are other styles, like in Kali, where they do it completely different than that, where they don't stem for target. They'll receive the blow and then they'll retreat to a safe distance and then swing their stick around threateningly in the air. This is usually called an amara. We sometimes will call it florete or flowering. And there are other names, I'm sure. That don't come to mind directly, but I know that there's a couple other names for that. But it's almost like a combination of receiving a blow and then shadow boxing as your counterattack, right? And that's really valuable because you can go fast and hard. And you don't have to worry about hurting your opponent still, your partner. But it's not that valuable because you're practicing to miss. So you have to trade them. And that's what I always say with students is it's part of a continuum, right? If you're going to stick spar, right, and you're going to do it one rule set versus another, as long as it's part of a continuum of your training that starts with basic movement, moves to classical conditioning, incorporate some kind of operant conditioning in your training with reflex training like that, moving to sparring of some sort, right? Getting as close as you can to a real fight, and it's all part of a continuum, it's great. I'm not saying that you should close the loop and actually get into a real fight, although I can't tell you how valuable those experiences were for me and how it allows me to honestly look at the training that I've been under and have done and look at how it's made me formidable, where it's been inadequate, where the arts of my colleagues are, formidable and in every case respectable, but also there's a level of inadequacy in all of the training, and that's true of all training. It doesn't matter if, I knew a guy his whole school was about, well, we just do sparring, right? So they do all the different kinds of sparring and street fighting. It was a street fighting school, right? And great. Those guys were tough, resilient. They also weren't very refined, right? They also were, they had coordination issues, right? And there was a limit to the complexity of the fight that they couldn't reach as a whole. And that's okay too, because you're not going to actually encounter that person necessarily, right? Unless you're coming from a school that's training to be that person, right? So that's different too. And it's not for everyone. Not everyone is like that, right? And that training is certainly not for everyone because, they brutalized each other through training. And they had more frequent visits to the hospital just in training, right? And then you go to other places where, maybe they're a fight school, right? In the sense of they're pro fighters and stuff. So they're always banging. And so they're taking trips to the hospital more frequently than, say, other schools. And while they're doing stuff and they're hitting hard and there might even be a little bit of malice in the training, it doesn't necessarily mean it's truly a fight. It's like you look at a boxing match. Awesome. I love boxing. You still got to ask yourself, well, how is that like a fight? How is that not like a fight? Well, for one, they agreed upon that time. They knew when that fight was going to happen, right? I swear every time that I arrested someone as a fugitive retrieval agent and we swoop down on a guy and it ends up in a fight, a little scuffle, a kerfluffle, it was a surprise, right? Every time that somebody tried to attack me as a bouncer while I was trying to do something with someone else, it was mostly a surprise. You start to become aware when you're, in a situation where you're going to be dealing with confrontation and you know that the buddy's going to try to blindside you. The first time was a surprise. After that, you only need to be surprised once before you learn better that it's kind of a surprise in the sense like you're You're aware of that person. You're just hoping it's not going to go in that direction because it always gets a little bit darker then. But you look at a professional match or even a sporting competitive match, it's like a fight. They're trying to hurt each other. They're trying to hit each other. It's not like a fight. That was an agreed upon time. There's a referee and a time limit and rules, right? Does that mean it's not dangerous? Hell no, that's dangerous, right? You're playing with your dog, your neighbor's dog. Dog decides to get a little wild, nips at you. Dangerous. Could be serious. It's definitely serious for that dog, at least here in the States, right? Could end up in the dog being put down, right? But serious. No less dangerous, because we don't know how that dog will react, than a rabid dog. A rabid dog is more likely more dangerous, right? Than that, right? And then mistreating a dog that has a bad past, right? Like a dog that's been trained to fight, dog fights. Dangerous. Even more dangerous, right? In a different way. They're all dangerous. Every wild creature is dangerous. But not exactly, right? And in the same sense, your training is the same way, and the people that you train with, same thing. Very much like a fight. To the person who doesn't do martial arts, doesn't do any kind of fight sport, it's all fighting. The person that's never been in a street fight and they see two people having a scuffle, there's some pushing and shoving, maybe a little bit of wrestling, they're like, oh my God, that was a fight. To the MMA fighter, they'll look at that and go, that wasn't a fight. What was that? That was some pushing and shoving, and one guy swung and then they got broken up. That ain't a fight, right? To the girlfriend of a mouthy dude that just learns that maybe he shouldn't open his mouth that way, that was a fight, right? So we have to be honest with ourselves in our training. Was it a fight? The answer is probably going to be no in their training. So how was it like a fight? And how was it not like a fight? And in the end, even if you did just forms, right, for most of your lesson, you're walking away with more experience and more practice in the utilization of your body in a manner that in its end is intentfully supposed to be for, doing harm and preventing harm being done upon oneself, right? You're always getting ahead of the person that doesn't do those things, right? And depending upon the intensity of your training, if you're very, very intense, like there's some pro fighters that come to the gym that I teach at now, very, very intense, right? They're at an advantage over the average person, right? They've honed their body and their mind for a particular kind of interaction that is the most intimate in human interactions, right? And I do mean that, the most intimate. And the most difficult of human interactions for us to maintain a sense of control, emotionally and intellectually, let alone physically, physiologically. So you're always going one step ahead. Unless, of course, you skip a class, in which case the other guy is ahead, right? And being honest with ourselves will bring us a great deal of value as to what we're doing and to help us calibrate for the use of our art, which is what our goal is. Our goal is to be capable, right? To be the competent man, as Highland would say. This is just an element of that, right? And as long as we're honest with ourselves, we can take a step forward that day and take many steps forward beyond that. One of the last considerations I will leave you with is this. Your training should accommodate just about any kind of fighting that's possible, and also calculate the advancement of time on your body. If you're training in a way where 10 years from now you ain't gonna be able to do that because you ain't so spry, you might want to revisit your training, right? And how it's preparing you for it, right? You got a shelf life if you're a judoka. You got a shelf life if you're a kickboxer. You got a shelf life if you're a boxer, right? So the flesh is temporary, and we need to remember that. But steel is forever. I'll see you guys on the training floor.